All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first in our series of what to do if you find a wild animal. My name is Jennifer, and I'm the education manager here at the Blue Ridge Wildlife Center. I'm also one of the staff rehabilitators. We at the Blue Ridge Wildlife Center take in over 2,200 native animals a year, native patients a year, that have either been injured, they're sick, or they're orphans. So they're wildlife in need that have been discovered, and most of the time they have been discovered by you, the public. So we always want to make sure that if you come across wildlife in need, that you know the best way to get those animals the help that they might require. We do want to make sure that you understand that rescuing animals, the rules and regulations for helping wildlife is going to differ state to state. Any information that I give for you today, any advice that you might hear, is based on Virginia's Department of Game and Inland Fisheries regulations, rules, and permit conditions for wildlife rehabilitators. If you come across an animal in your state that you feel needs help, make sure that you reach out to either permanent individuals or your Department of Natural Resources in some kind to find those people who can give you the best advice to get animals the help that they need. Today we're going to be speaking specifically about helping baby mammals that you think might need some assistance. So here at the center from April until about September, we take in over 50% of our patient load, and most of those are young wildlife. And a lot of those are young mammals that have somehow been separated from the parents or gotten ill or injured and needed our help. So we always want to make sure that if you come across those animals, you know the best way to help them. And sometimes they don't need our help. So generally speaking, if you come across injured wildlife, injured mammals, they are going to need some kind of assistance. You can call us, or you can call your local rehabilitators. There's a list, again, on the Department of Game and Inland Fisheries website that has detailed information about who is in your area, what animals they're able to rehabilitate, and contact information for them. So if those animals need assistance, we would give you the best advice on how to capture or contain and then transport them to the best place. We want to make sure that you guys know never to handle wildlife with your bare hands, no matter how young animals are. All animals can bite. So we want to make sure we start with at least a thick leather glove. And garden gloves and things are not bad either, but you're going to want to make sure you have enough layers. They all have teeth, and those teeth can be sharp. Besides that, we always want to make sure you have another layer, blankets, towels, or even tools, as cruel as it may sound, rakes, brooms, anything, just scooping them straight into a box to make sure that we're reducing the contact between you and wildlife for their safety and for yours. We do want to make sure we can help them without injuring them further or getting you injured. Safety is always our first point.
So if I were to panic and pick up a wild animal with my bare hands and it bit me, is that a big deal?
So if you do pick up animals with your bare hands before you talk to a rehabilitator and you just kind of immediately go and pick them up with the bare hands, if you're bitten or scratched by a mammal, we do have to contact the health department and let them know, and then the health department will make a determination on whether or not that animal needs to be tested for rabies. So rabies is not the only thing that we are concerned about. Certain animals, different animals, mammals especially, have a lot of diseases called zoonotics that are able to be transferred from babies, even babies from animals, to humans. So we want to make sure, for your safety and for theirs. This is especially important for all carnivorous mammals and what have been known as the rabies vector species. These are raccoons, skunks, foxes, bats, and groundhogs. And now all carnivorous mammals as well. So we do want to make sure, again, that you're using personal protection, because it protects you and it ultimately protects that animal as well. So if we do advise you to bring them into us, we'll give you the best way on how to capture, contain, and make sure that everybody is safe during the process. If they are not injured, our advice for the most part is going to be an attempt first to reunite or re-nest babies with their parents. So parents spend a lot of time making these babies, raising these babies, giving them care, and they are going to come back for them if at all possible.
One of the questions I get a lot when taking phone calls from people is, how do they know if it's injured? Now, I talk to a lot of people about it. Is it visibly broken or bleeding? But a lot of people are confused about how they can tell if an animal is necessarily injured. So how would they know?
So it's not always possible to know whether or not an animal is injured. We always make the first look for obvious injuries. If you're seeing bruising, if they're not able to use a leg, if you see cuts, scrapes, things like that, that is definitely an indication that they're injured and that they need help. If we don't see any obvious injuries, we may take you through a couple of questions about behaviors, and we try to make our best guess from there. If those animals are not injured, obviously or otherwise, or we deem them that they look healthy enough or sound healthy enough to attempt reuniting, we'll talk you through the process there. So mammals generally have more than one den site. So even if you've uncovered a nest or you've accidentally cut a tree down that had babies in it, those parents or mothers are going to come back and they have a secondary nest that they can bring their babies to. So they take their babies and move them to that secondary spot. The babies, the location that they have their babies in, it's usually the best for some reason. Either it's the biggest or it's the closest to a food or water source, but it's by no means their only one. So they're definitely going to prefer to keep their babies there, but obviously if circumstances demand it, they will move them to a new location. We also want to make sure that you know what kind of animal you have, because that's going to change how we attempt to reunite with their parents.
I don't understand. Why do we have to reunite them with their parents? Why can't I just bring it to you and let you take care of it?
So we always prefer our first step, our best step is to reunite, because even though we are very successful at raising babies, there are some things that we can't teach them. So thankfully certain things are instinctual, so if babies are brought to us, we're able to raise them, and there are a lot of good behaviors that they are born obviously are already knowing how to do, so we don't have to teach them those things. But there are a lot of things that we can't teach them that they need to know, and it just kind of puts them at a disadvantage. So even though we can release them, they are healthy, and they're going to go out in the world, it does put a damper, significant disability on their survivability long term. So we can release them, they can make it in the wild, but they're going to be lacking those skills that babies that were raised by wild parents are going to have. So they're going to lose a lot of those competitions against other of their same species for those resources. So our best efforts, best practice is to reunite first. So one of those examples of trying to reunite, we have our first guest. This is Rufio. Here he is. Rufio is our Eastern Gray Squirrel. And when he was just a baby, he was only about 3 weeks old, his nest was unfortunately cut out of a tree. So they cut the tree down, they didn't realize that there was a nest of baby squirrels in it, and they gave us a call as soon as they found out. We talked them through the right process. We said, go ahead and put them in a box. Give mom some time to come back and leave the area. This is important. Whenever we talk about reuniting or renesting, we always want to make sure that after the babies are put in a safe place and given that chance, we want to make sure that all human activity, children, pets, people leave the area. So even if you've accidentally handled an animal, or even if you're wearing all the protective equipment, all of that's going to smell like people. That's usually not enough to keep parents from coming back to the babies. But an obvious presence of humans is going to be a scary thing. So they're not going to come back to their babies until they think that it's safe to do so. So we want to make sure when we talk about reuniting that we mean leaving those babies out there and giving 6 to 8 hours of undisturbed time for the parents to realize their babies aren't where they left them, to find them in the new spot, and then to move them to their secondary den. For Rufio here, after he was brought into the center and we started to raise him, we noticed a couple of things. One, and you probably can't see, and I apologize for that, he does have a cloudy eye. So his left eye is completely clouded, he can't see out of it, and he was born this way. So when his eyes opened for the first time, that left eye was already unusable. And that right there was a good enough reason for us to go ahead and keep him as part of our ambassador team as a prey species. It's very important for him to be able to see predators coming from both sides, and without a left eye, that wasn't going to work out very well. It's very important for squirrels and other rodents. Their teeth stay a safe length by the friction of them rubbing against each other. So without those top incisors to keep his bottom incisors in check, they could actually grow long enough to prevent him from eating or injure him inside his mouth. So every 3 to 4 weeks, he undergoes general anesthesia and gets those teeth ground down. Now for Rufio, there's a lot of natural things that he knows how to do. He automatically caches, so that's when squirrels hide food, so they take food that they're not hungry for and they hide it in certain places. This is the behavior that helps them over the winter. So that's something he's born knowing how to do, automatically knowing how to do. But you can see how we have trained him through years. He's actually he's going to be turning 5. All of these years of training with him, he is obviously looking to people for food, and this is something we want to prevent in the wild animals that we release. So this behavior here, where he's coming over and knowing if he comes over to me, he'll get treats, is something that we try our hardest to make sure that animals don't display. And this is one of the important reasons why it is always best to get wild animals to rehabilitators rather than trying to do it at home. Not only can it be a danger for you or the animals, but a lot of times at the end you end up with animals that are too friendly and are not able to be released because they will get into trouble in the real world. So there are a couple of exceptions for species when it comes to re-nesting and reuniting, and just kind of behavioral things that you look at. One of the big ones that we get a lot of calls about are white-tailed deer, or fawns. There are a lot of regulations about deer and fawns in Virginia. For example, here in Clark County, because of a disease called chronic wasting disease, which is scattered throughout the state but heavily concentrated in the Frederick and Shenandoah counties, we are not permitted to rehabilitate fawns of any age. We're also not permitted throughout the state to rehabilitate deer older than 6 months old. So even though we get a lot of calls about deer and we're not able to take them in, we are more than happy to give advice about what to do if you find a fawn. A big issue for people is that white-tailed deer doe they usually leave their babies in the same spot for 14 plus hours. And a lot of times those areas can look really good when they leave their babies there at 4 a.m. But as we start to wake up as people and start moving around and going on with our day, those places can get busy. We've gotten calls about fawns sleeping on the side of the road, sleeping up against office buildings, in your backyard where you have a dog, but maybe you didn't again at 4 a.m. when mom said this is a good place. And so they put them there and then they leave and they spend most of the day away from the baby. If you come across a fawn who is laying down, curled up, a lot of times they'll even let you walk right up to them, and that doesn't always mean that that baby is ill or injured. A lot of times it could just mean that they are staying hidden. So they automatically know that laying down and staying still is the best way for them to stay safe. Their former predators are attracted to movement, so anytime that if they were to get scared and run, they would get chased, so they automatically know to sit still. And if they stay still, mom will come back for them.
So what would be the kind of things that I would see with the fawn that would indicate that it does need help?
So if you come across a fawn that is, again, laying down, curled up, sleeping, they might move from place to place. They might move from a shady spot to a sunny spot and back, but they're going to be quiet. They're going to walk away from you. They're not going to want to interact with you. And those are usually good indications that they are being taken care of. If you come across a fawn who has been crying for hours, that has wounds or obviously if they're obviously wounded or flies around them. But again, the crying is really the big one. They are, again, instinctually they want to stay quiet and they want to stay still. So if they're wandering for long lengths and they are making a lot of noise, that's an indication that they are starting to get hungry, they're starting to get scared, and they definitely are looking for their mom. Mom hasn't come back for some reason, and they're trying to reconnect with her. Now the good news about this is even though there are a lot of regulations about fawn rehabilitation, and there are not a lot of options in terms of permanent individuals that can take in fawns, one of the great things is that doe are known for adopting orphans. So if there is a nursing doe in the area and she hears these cries, a lot of times they'll come up, they'll check on the baby, and then the baby will just follow them. So they'll get a new mother out of it, which is really great. So it's always recommended you give us a call, we can talk you through the process, but a lot of times even if they're crying, we're going to say just give it a little time and see if another adult is in the area who'd be willing to raise them.
Well, if I find a fawn and I don't think the mother is in the picture, why can't I just take it home and feed it like a pet?
So one of the things that we deal a lot with are people who just, they take the fawn home, they think it's really cute and it's really easy to raise. A problem with that, first, obviously the big one, again, it is illegal to raise or give care to any wildlife without a permit. This goes for birds, mammals, reptiles of any age. So we want to make sure that the people who are giving care to these animals are trained professionals who have been studying to do this and trained to do this in a proper way. The other reason that we don't recommend, especially for fawns and other larger animals like that, is they can be very dangerous as they get older. So they're very small when they're young, they can be very cute, but as they get older, they are going to get a lot bigger, and those fawns that don't have any fear of humans can actually end up doing damage. That has been known for male deer who've been raised by people to think that they are people, so they get imprinted in that way and actually attack others that they feel are coming into their territory. And this includes the people who raised them. A lot of times they can't make that distinction, and it can be a danger for you and for them down the road. So always make sure that you are talking to a permanent rehabilitator, someone who's legally able to take in these animals so that they get raised and released in the best way possible. Another exception that we get a lot of calls about are cottontails. These animals, their nest is not very elaborate. It's usually just a depression in the grass, sometimes filled with fur or dried grass, that mom comes and lays over top of. That's all she does. She lays over top. The babies reach up and nurse, and then she's on her way. She will only come back to feed them twice a day, so it is very rare for you to see an adult rabbit at the nest. They come back usually right around dawn, and then sometime right in the darkest part of the night. So they try to go as long as possible between feeding their babies and under as much cover as possible, so they're not drawing attention again to their nest, to their helpless babies. So they want to make sure that they are hidden and protected the whole time. So there are a lot of ways that people say, oh, we put sticks in the shape of an X over the nest, we put some flour or some string. A lot of times the gentle way that cottontails are, they can actually lay over all top of this and not disturb any of it. So our best clue for babies that are being taken care of is they are warm, they're quiet, they're tucked down in the nest. They are trying to stay really still, especially if you're there. They like to pretend that they're not there and you can't see them. So that's a good indication to us that they're being cared for. If you find closed-eyed babies outside the nest, that's usually an indication to us that something has gone wrong and they might need to get help. So you want to go ahead and give us a call in that situation. They're also very, very small when they're independent. They're weaned at about 4 weeks, and they usually leave the nest. They're usually not getting care by mom after 4 weeks, but they might stay in the nest for another week or so. So cottontails are generally small. They're only about the size of your palm. If you cup your hand, they'll about fill the size of the palm of your hand. And that's an independent rabbit. So we do get a lot of calls about quote-unquote baby bunnies that have been found wandering in the yard, and people gather them up and then try to put them back in the nest. That's a teenage rabbit, and he's independent. We want to make sure that we're not scaring them or keeping them in captivity, because they can be very high stress. So we always want to make sure, again, if you're not sure about the situation, take some pictures, give us a call, and we're more than happy to talk you through it. Last exception that we're going to talk about today are Virginia opossums. Everybody welcome back Nigel, our education opossum here. So opossums are, again, they are Canada and the United States only marsupial. This means that they carry their babies in their pouch. So they do not have a den, they do not have a nest. Their babies travel with them the whole time. So generally, again, if something happens to mom, something happens to the whole family, and we like to make sure that they're taken care of. A lot of times if mom is frightened, if she's attacked somehow, if she gets injured, the babies might either fall out of the pouch, or if they're old enough to ride on her back, they might fall off her back. And if mom runs, she will not come back for her babies. So any young that are smaller than 7 inches, that's approximately the length of your hand from the tips of your fingers to the heel of your palm. And that's from nose to butt, that does not include the tail. If they're less than 7 inches, they are going to need care, and we do recommend, if you find babies of that age, to give us a call, and we'll let you know the best way to get them contained and the best person to take them to. In addition to that, especially in the roadways in the evenings, we get a lot of orphaned opossums where the mothers have been hit by a car. And again, those babies are in the pouch, so the whole family kind of experiences that disaster together. In the case of that, there is no alternative parent. There is no, of the mammals in our area, foxes are really the only ones that are a two-parent nest. That get raised. So opossums, the male does not help, so if the female passes away, the babies don't have anybody to help care for them. So if you find an opossum that's been hit by a car, if you see one hit by a car on the side of the road, and you think there might be babies in the pouch, if it's safe to do so, you can stop and check. You may also give us a call, and we can advise you on how to bring the whole thing to us, mom and all, and we can check for babies inside the pouch ourselves as well. Anything that's old enough for us to raise, we'd be able to take it from there. So we want to thank you guys so much for joining us. We hope that you'll come back next time, where we are going to talk about what to do if you find baby birds in need.